meeting is being recorded.
All right, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our final discussion on the Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. I am Dr. Felicia Durden. I'm your facilitator tonight, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all. This is Colson Whitehead's painting of him, and we know that he's that Pulitzer Prize winning writer, and he writes books that are just very riveting and that draw us in. We had a really good time discussing his book, The Nickel Boys, and so from there we went into the Underground Railroad. So the Underground Railroad is what would be considered historical fiction, and that's a genre in which stories take place in the past. That's the setting, using characteristics of that time period to create a story that never really happened, but the times happened. And so what I think Colson did a really good job at is that he was able to weave in his story about the Underground Railroad and give us his impression of it and kind of fantasize it in a way, with the Underground Railroad actually being a railroad train, which we'll talk about when we discuss. Another thing that he did very well in his historical fiction is showing slavery and how it truly was just a horrific experience, and the brutality. He was able to really share that with us so that we could be able to see that. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about are quilts, and Carol is here, but we're not able to hear her. Oh my goodness. And I don't want to steal her thunder. So I'm going to wait, and then we'll possibly come back to this. And if it doesn't work tonight, we'll do it another time. But quilts were important during the time of the Underground Railroad. Fugitive slaves would use quilts as a means of communication, which is what Carol was going to elaborate on. They were used by the conductors to help fugitive slaves flee to the South and arrive in safely to the North.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yay!
Okay.
Right on time. And this is a beautiful quilt here that you can see with all the different patches. And so Carol, right on cue, is here with us.
Okay.
Okay.
Give me
and
one
then,
second.
Sure. And she's going to, because she did an amazing event this weekend with the children at the History Museum. If you didn't take your kids out, you missed out. It was a great time. And the quilting station was a very popular area that kids were in, and they got to learn about quilts and how they were used during the times of slavery to help slaves gain freedom.
Okay, so you want me to start?
Her first slide is messages in plain sight. Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, here you see the symbol of the snake. And very often we have been conditioned to see certain symbols that are plain in sight, but we have misinterpreted them. So here you see the symbol of the snake, and we think of it as something evil, when actually the snake means the renewal of life, immortality, creating something new. So a sign that we know that is negative is seen as actually being very positive.
Excellent, excellent. Now the next slide.
You're doing the geese. So before we do the geese, let me just say that symbolism is something that has been used throughout all the countries and all the cultures throughout the world. Africa alone has 54 countries and over 3,000 different tribes. And what you have to understand is that they came together and incorporated all of their knowledge together for what symbols we could do in plain sight that would be misinterpreted as something mild and docile, that no one would know exactly what we were doing. And now we'll show you some of the slides that we used with the quilts.
Awesome.
The first slide is what they call the flying geese. Always the pattern would be north, east, south, and west, but one of the patterns would be in a different color. And that would be telling them, this is the direction that you're going to be traveling in. And very often the quilt would either be made in one big quilt that would be hung up, or else it would be in a sentence pattern for them to look at the quilt from a distance, very often hung on a line, that they could read and know that they need to head in a certain direction.
Beautiful.
The next slide. Now, this was called the tumbling blocks. And what they would do is the tumbling blocks, there would be some that had different colors. And what the different colors would represent would be how many days you have to wait wherever you are or waiting before you could escape. So that too was another symbol that looked very pretty, but had a very special meaning.
Great.
Okay. The North Star, which is always most important, that if by chance you got lost, you could look up to the sky and know that your direction for north. So head north, because north was a safe territory, west was a safe territory, because the west belonged to the French. And many of the Africans, having traded so many thousands of years with the French, they knew French, they knew Dutch. So they knew that if they made it to the west, they would be safe.
Perfect.
Okay. Now we have the shoe fly. That was very important, that particular sign, because that would let you know that a guide or someone is coming, the conductor. The Moses is going to show up. And Harriet Tubman, this often represented that she's coming. So you would look for this sign, and then you would know that your guide is on his way.
That's so interesting.
It was just, it's just unbelievable. And the wagon wheel would often be used nearby to let you know that there was a wagon, that you will be traveling some of your distance hidden within the wagon. Even though it was called the Underground Railroad, in the book, he did use an actual railroad, but that was rare.
Right.
Very often, if an escapee had left, he could travel with someone who could pass for white or be white and act as though he was the servant. But the train was very, very dangerous for them to travel on.
Beautiful.
So that symbol was the wagon wheel. And the log cabin, when you saw this particular square, you knew that that house was someplace you could go and be safe. You would be able to speak to them, you would be taken care of, and you knew that your journey is now almost to an end because you're at a safe house, and here you may actually be changing clothes and getting more information for where you're going.
Great.
The crossroads lets you know mainly that you were at this point. Are you going to go to Canada? Do you want to go west to Illinois, that area? So this is what the crossroad was. There was usually water at that point. So you had to make up your mind which direction you were going in. If you knew your family was in a certain area, you would then take the time to go and say that was the direction you were going in. So this lets you know that now is your decision to decide where you're going to be free.
Beautiful. Just before we get into the songs, I just thank Carol because I have always loved quilts. And I'm going to go back to that first one with all these beautiful blocks. As an African American, I never knew what these meant for years. Right. For years.
And the thing is, the beauty of it is that each one is telling you something to do. And very often you can make complete sentences from the quilts to tell you, this is where you're going. This is what's going to happen. Follow the bear tracks. There were certain zigzag clauses, like in the third row in the middle, it was they're on your trail. So you need to do a zigzag pattern, get into water, wash off your scent. And this was all for the safety of because they couldn't talk to you. Right. So this was their only way to let you know. And very often when you were in the woods and the slaves may have been on the plantation, if you saw the quilt, you had an idea of direction and what to do. Beautiful.
What I would propose, not that many of us are on here tonight, but we might need to do a quilting bee where we make some of these blocks.
Oh, yes.
That represent, wouldn't that be nice? I just love quilts, and I think that would just be wonderful. I'm so excited by your presentation, by the way. This is awesome. Okay, now we're going to get to songs. There we go.
Okay. Now, one of the other things that was also very interesting is that a lot of the spirituals, a lot of the songs that were sung, they all had a meaning. Wade in the Water is an old song, which meant to walk in the water and lose your scent. The famous song, the spiritual song, Steal Away, it was a call to let you know, come to the woods, we're going to teach you to read, because that was against the law. We're either going to organize, we're getting ready to leave, or we're getting ready to do an uprising. And the words themselves, when it says, call me by the thunder, it meant leave in a rainstorm, because the rain is coming and that'll wash away your footprints. They had Roll, Jordan, Roll, and they would sing that song very happily. And the owners wouldn't know what was going on because they often sang while they were picking the cotton. And this was to let you know that you were very close to your destination. And then Ezekiel saw the wheel. And again, that's another meaning, that anything that had a wheel, a chariot, anything traveling would let you know that there'll be a wagon nearby. It's getting closer to your time. You may take a train, but all of these were buzzwords. Yes. Within all of the spirituals were buzzwords that they had learned the code. And again, there are secret societies throughout the world, and they have their little handshakes and they have the buzzwords. And so did we. Even when we talk to one another, one could say, if they were in town, two would meet and say, oh, I heard that, you know, there's a new shipment of lumber coming in tomorrow. You know, I hope that it's good and strong. And that was a clue that someone's coming in. Be prepared that you're going to have 4 people to hide. So there were a lot of words going around, and this was a very dangerous time, and it took a lot of strength. And we just continued from the day we got here to fight and to get out and to figure out how to be free.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Oh, that was our last slide. Carol, anything else to wrap it up? You're just so knowledgeable on all of this, and I just thought it was really important that you share.
And again, I can't hear.
Oh no.
Second.
Can you hear us now?
Nope. Give me a second.
Okay. We do thank her for this amazing presentation. I'm sorry, she's having some technical difficulties, but she's going to try to come back. We're going to, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
I can. Any final things to wrap up? I was just thanking you for this amazing presentation.
Oh, thank you, honey. And you know what I'm finding out? When I plug in the speaker, you can't hear me.
There you go. Now we figured it out. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. No, I just really enjoyed it. Hearing from her, her ability to share with us what these symbols mean in plain sight. I think that's just great. I want to explore this more. It's really encouraged me to explore more into this as I am learning more about my own history. So Carol, thank you.
Oh, thank you, honey.
Oh, much.
Did you get a booklet from the event?
I did, but I misplaced. So I need to get another one, please.
I'll have to give you another one because it does explain a lot of things. It's very interesting.
Please, I would like that. I don't know what happened to my bag. I might have got misplaced. So thank you.
You're welcome, honey.
All right. Carol's awesome. We're going to go through parts 5 through 12 tonight, which is to finish out the book. And I'm going to do a little bit different because that's why I had Carol share in the beginning also our insights on what Colson wrote, because we read another book by him, going into more of our feelings about what he wrote and how it inspired us. But before we get that, we're going to listen to him talking to Oprah about his book, because his book was part of her book club at one point. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen. And I'm going to share another one, and we're going to get into the video. All right, here we go.
First of all, just let me say congratulations, because this book took my breath away.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. When you started with the premise, where did the idea come from, the Underground Railroad?
It was about 16 years ago, and I think a lot of people, when they're kids, they hear about the Underground Railroad.
Right.
I think it's an actual subway,
right,
you know, for a few minutes, and then they're sadly disillusioned of that. And so about 16 years ago, I thought, what if the Underground Railroad actually was a literal underground network? And I started thinking about some more.
Yeah.
And then I thought, what if, as our hero travels north, every state he goes through, and he at that point, each different state, North Carolina, South Carolina, was a different state of American possibility. And so each time she gets off on a at a station and comes up from underground. She finds a different alternative America, slightly tweaked,
Yeah.
But different sort of state of possibility.
Yeah. And that first time she comes up, which I've often thought about this since Beloved, you know, Toni Morrison's. And
Surely.
yeah, that line where you got to get out of the yard, you got to leave the yard in her book, when she's speaking of the character Denver. I often thought about the slaves who never left the yard. And then suddenly, after thinking about it for a long time, planning the escape, make the decision, and you've never been any further than the front yard. It's just the most incredible thing.
Yeah, you never stepped off the property, and
you never knew a world bigger than the front yard.
All you've known is the tragedy of the plantation.
Yes.
And how do you get the courage to make that first step?
Yes.
And then once you do, and you're off across the boundary line, how do you keep going? And so you're waiting for years, you're waiting for the full moon, then you finally make that, that leap.
Okay, he's gonna do one more piece that I want to show. Writing, why did he write this book about slavery?
You know, I remember when I was promoting the movie Beloved, I was being interviewed by a group of African-American journalists who actually said to me, why do we need another story about slavery? Why do we need another story about slavery? I go, how many have you seen?
Because we don't know. Nobody knows. I feel I'm reasonably educated. My first experience with understanding slavery was when I was 7 and Roots was on, and my parents, gathered us, all our kids, in front of the TV. This is how we got here. This is what, your ancestors encountered. And in college, you study American history.
Right.
Small section on slavery. And I think coming to the material as an adult, as a grown-up, definitely changed the way I approached it. I think it's one thing to understand it when you're 7, in your 20s, to understand the after effects of slavery, which reverberate in most segments of society now. But then to understand what it is to lose a parent, a child. I have children now, and
to never have the stability of knowing, this is what I say to people, never have the stability of knowing that your child really is yours and that your family can be together as long as, God has designed it, or the world has designed it, because you can come back from a cotton field and your children are gone, your husband's gone, your mother's gone, you are gone.
Yes, your property and your children's property, and
your property.
And you've been bought because you can actually make more slaves, like a mint making money.
Okay, we're gonna watch one more piece. Black Body.
Reading your book reminded me of actually my first trip and last trip to Auschwitz. I went there with Elie Wiesel, and when we entered the grounds, he was saying, make no mistake, this was a factory of death for death. Every day, how many people were killed was the product that, they were putting out. And so I felt that reading this book in a way that I hadn't before, that slavery obviously was a business and it was a factory for the use of whatever the master decided that he wanted. Yeah.
No, I mean, it was the prime economic engine of the country, and you're going to keep that that engine going, and the fuel is the black body that makes the product.
Okay, we're going to stop there. The fuel was the black body that made the product. I think that says a lot. All right, I am excited to get into this discussion this week. Just wanted to hear Oprah talk and interview Colson before we get started. Another quote I want us to talk about is, the only way to know how long you are lost in the darkness is to be saved from it. What does that quote mean to you? This is from the book. He says, the only way to know oh, go ahead, Carol.
It means that sometimes you don't know how bad your situation is until you have finally gotten out of it. And that can relate to a bad relationship in a marriage, a bad relationship between you and your children. And you're just lost. And I like the way she said lost in the darkness, because so often you can't see the light, that
Yeah.
there is a light, but you can't see it. And and you can't save yourself, you've done everything that you can, and you do need someone else to show you the way.
Oh my goodness, yes. And I'm sure we've all been in those times in our life where we didn't realize, oh my God, I was sunk in such darkness. Thank you, Carol. Miss Ruth, would you like to
Yes.
share? Would you like to share?
Oh, I just love the quilt story
Thank you.
because I had a chance to be with my grandmother, and they did meet every once a week
Uh-huh.
at night and sit and quilt
Oh,
until a quilt was done.
we're gonna have to
And
do that. I
it
want us.
was it was fun for me to sit there because if my grandmother needed the machine moved, I had to do the moving for her. And
Oh,
but it would be a gathering of women who came
yeah.
together,
Yes.
as the story said. I don't know if that their quilts meant the same as Carol has told us about the slavery, but it was a pastime for
Yeah.
those who did not have television.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Tara, did you want to share? I don't know if you're in a place where you can.
No, I'm just joining. So I missed a little
Okay,
bit.
no
Yeah.
problem. We'll move forward. Okay, so one of the things that Colton did a lot in this story was that he changed the point of view. He switched perspectives a lot. We saw scenes from Cora's point of view, and then we saw some from Ridgway's. Did that in any way, how did that influence your opinion of any of the characters? And why might he have done things in this way? And anyone can share on that.
Okay. For me, I realize what it does, it gave us, because we're living in these times today, and it's very hard to talk about your own country. It's very easy to talk about what happened in Europe or what's happening in Mexico, but it's hard to talk about America. And I think we were able to see 2 points of view, and it allowed you to understand the white perspective and about the money and the situations that they're in, and why they can justify doing what they know was wrong.
Absolutely.
And it's almost as though we are the conscience of their faith and what America is supposed to be. So I think balancing the two was excellent, because you really, you didn't have hatred. And I'm one that can get very angry, but you had no hatred here. You had an understanding.
Thank you for
which
saying
we
that.
already understand.
Yeah.
But it gave a beautiful perspective and a nice balance.
I appreciate you saying that. It helps you to understand and have a balance. And I think that's really what he was intending to do. You stated that brilliantly, that he wanted us to not get in anger, but to try to understand. And it did kind of calm things down, and you were able to see, oh, this is their point of view. This is what they were seeing, and this is how this person saw it. So I think he did a brilliant job of doing that in order to tell this really rich story in a way where we could see more than just one rigid point of view.
Right. And it also allows another audience, because you find that even we have a difficult time dealing with it, because sometimes it's too strong. And someone who is not from this perspective, this book gave them a nice opening.
Yes, he gave them that bridge, didn't he? That's awesome. Anyone else want to talk about the changing point of view? Okay. What about, it was an emotional roller coaster. Oprah said we didn't see the part, but she said she would just have to slam the book shut, and then she would, oh, now I'll go back to it. Just like he did in his other story, he just gets us into his characters so much. You get comfortable, and then there's this tragedy. And then you kind of you're on the edge of your seat, like, oh, what's going to happen next? He's really good at that. He writes thrillers. I mean, his first story was well, he has one out now. It's a spoof book that looks really good. I haven't read it yet. But how did that emotional roller coaster impact anyone? And if it's not even from this story, how does this sense of fear as a reader, what does it do to you when reading anything by Colson Whitehead?
I think it does tell me that when one storm is over, there will be another one. And it is continuously out of his stories how he told that.
Yeah. Oh,
and that we as people have seen that, or those of us who have gone through that experience of living all these years,
yes,
that there was always a storm and then there was one coming.
Thank you. That's
which kept us in a fear of what would be next. But we had to be calm down
Yep.
and really feel ourselves as being able to understand what that storm was going to bring.
Yes.
And how we were going to overcome it.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. I
Lisa.
love
Another
the
point
point you said.
I noticed. Oh, someone else.
Go ahead,
speaking.
Cookie. Go ahead, Tara.
Is someone else talking?
Tara.
I'm sorry.
Okay. I was just going to say, I read a book a couple of years ago about obstacles. And one of the quotes from that book reminds me of his approach to telling the stories. And that quote was, "You don't overcome an obstacle to never have any more obstacles." And the heartbreak of this story reminds us that it's their level of perseverance and commitment to freedom, even when they got messy and continued to be dangerous and sometimes seemed unlikely. Is a good reminder of that. You don't just overcome the obstacle and then, yeah, I'm here. I'm at the mountaintop. I'm good. We're free. Are you ever really? You have to stay free, and they have to fight for their freedom.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tara. That is such a good point. Give me the quote again. You don't overcome one obstacle.
You don't overcome an obstacle to never have any more obstacles.
To never have any more obstacles. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
And it is such a burden to carry because we carry that all the time. We always have to second guess. And it is true, every now and then when the storm is past, we have a breather. And it only makes me more proud to be who I am and to be able to stand when I look back at what we have gone through and everything that we have accomplished in spite of everything that has been against us as a group. And yet we don't have hate. This is the thing that is probably the hardest thing for people to understand. We don't come from hate.
No.
We really don't. We come from justice. And we will fight the storm. We will be strong. And we just take our breathers and we wait.
Thank you, Carol, Tara, and Ruth. That was beautiful, Miss Ruth. What it made me think of is I tried to put myself in the place of being a slave. And wouldn't I have been on an emotional roller coaster? I could almost feel the tension that they felt, just a piece of it. My God, I'm not even, discounting what they went through, but it was always an emotional roller coaster. Like they said in the video we watched, you could come back from the fields and your kids are gone, or your husband or your wife is gone. So they had those good times that they had, and they held on to them when they sang and ate together. And there was a bunch of love. I think there was a lot of love and just the importance of family that they had. But there was so much emotional instability. And I think as a writer, he was having us kind of be on that roller coaster along with the characters. And he did a good job of it.
But we also have to forget about our emotions, especially the ones that are holding us down.
Correct.
If we concentrate on that emotion, we won't get our goal, or we won't accomplish our goal.
Good point.
So we have to let go of that emotion. That is, oh yes, I didn't get what I wanted at this time,
Uh-huh.
but I'm still going to do what I have planned to do, is finish my job.
Beautifully stated, and such a life lesson. Thank you, Miss Ruth. Yeah, you can't let it paralyze you. You got to keep moving forward. And our people didn't they? That's why we've accomplished as much as we have today. If not, we would be nothing. Now, I
To
like
your
his
point, when you put down fear,
Mm-hmm.
after a while, you don't have fear. You just have determination.
That's the truth.
You
That's
know, the fear factors don't work anymore. It's overdone, and you just do what needs to be done.
get it done.
And I don't even believe you even think about fear when you have to do that.
Mhm.
That
It's like
when you have
childbirth.
Yeah, no turning back.
have to accomplish something, you just do it. And
Gotta push through. Oh, now he was really touted in this book for having magical realism. That is one of the things that the literary critics really acclaim him for, is his magical realism of a literal underground railroad. They make a big deal out of it. I want to know what you guys think about that. Why do you think he chose to use that? Or what is your thought? I mean, do you think it was a big deal, or just your thinking on this? Anyone?
Well, one thing that I know is that mountains are not solid. Because of all the mining that goes on, there are a lot of caves. The Indians know all about all the passages that are there. And I think, again, dealing with another population, that possibly there were a few railroads, but that was not the context of the Underground Railroad.
Right.
Because there were boats, there were paths, there were wagons. So I think using the train and probably the old cave mines happened as well, because everything was possible.
Yep. Good point. Tara,
they did not go the way in which they had been told to go in many times. They had to bypass some of the ways in order to make it safe for them.
Good point. Good point. I think I totally agree with everything you guys wrote. He took his poetic license, if you will, his literary license in doing that. I think he's just such a clever author, and that he likes to enjoy what he's doing. And he talks about how when he was a little kid, he liked trains, and he just kind of fantasized about it. And so I think that's why he probably did it. But it was really telling when he mentioned that he watched Roots when he was 7. He's my age, by the way. And I remember watching Roots with my family too, and just being horrified by it, and going to school because the kids were watching it and just feeling so uncomfortable, because we didn't know what to say about what we were seeing on TV, because we did not get this in our school. They did not teach us anything about slavery, and maybe a couple of words, blacks were slaves, and then you move on. And then when he went to college, he got a little bit. I wonder if he's kind of showing us his childlike, how would I put it, lack of understanding of slavery for so many years, by putting in this magical train in it. It's kind of him being a little naive or being a little young in mind. That's just my thought. What do you guys think?
I think he's being more realistic. Part of it is that we were taught it's so negative. Oh, they didn't do this, they didn't do that, they don't know this. So we never got a good understanding or an education about this to be proud of it. And you know, to understand it now, it's a sense of pride and strength.
It is.
To say yes, and look at what we have done. We have done what no one else has done in any other country, you know, who has gone on, who's gone through everything that we've gone through. So it may look as though he's made light of it, but I think that he's made it more palatable for us to understand it and to have a sense of pride that we did not have before.
Very good. Very good.
I think it is bringing out to us that have gone through it a realistic approach to what it was all about. But as not having been taught, and young children today haven't been taught.
No, they've not. They've not been taught.
And it is missing, as I have worked in the history department or the museums. And I've had older people tell me, as I heard earlier, we don't want to hear about that slavery. That's too painful to know about.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to repeat what was done. And therefore they can't. And I think that the author has brought out it in a beautiful way.
He did.
But did he forget that most of us don't know how to read?
There's a great truism. If you do not know your history, you are destined to repeat it.
That's
and that is true. And this is part of why we don't know our history. You know, but he's done a beautiful job, an absolute beautiful job. And yes, it's painful until you find the pride, until you can be proud of all the accomplishments.
Absolutely. I've talked to some high school teachers who have used the book. I'm part of the National Council of Teachers of English. And what they find is the kids don't know and don't realize that this is historical fiction. It's not nonfiction, because they just really don't know their history. And so she goes into having to explain to them a lot of what Carol told us tonight, you know, about the wagons and the other ways that they traveled, and that this was not realistic fiction. So it says a lot about what we need to change as far as getting our history out there. So good discussion on that piece. I'll leave it at that. All right. Oh, wrong slide. Okay. What surprised you? Did you find anything surprising in the Underground Railroad? Were there any turn of events that you didn't expect to happen? And then, or how did you feel about Cora's mother's decision to run away? And did your opinion of Cora's mother change once you learned about her fate? So either one of those or both. Anything that surprised you, or anything about Cora's mom and her fate, and did that change any of your feelings about her?
I was so happy to see a chapter on her, because I was curious what happened. What did she do? And for her to have left her child, with the child not knowing, was something we did not do and we don't do. So I was a bit upset with her, but I can understand her frustration and her desperation. And she had just gotten to that point to say, enough, I can't do it anymore. But she did try to come back. Right. Because it was that moment of that love for her child to say, I have to go back. So that was a beautiful surprise. And I was happy to read that.
I liked it too. I think he does that. Remember in the Nickel Boys, how at the end, he kind of ties up those loose ends. He does a really good job of tying up loose ends in his books. And it did give us some understanding and closure on that. Good. Miss Ruth, anything surprised you, or anything about Cora's mom?
Well, it allows me to look at today, and I've known a lot of foster children who were taken away from their mothers, and that wasn't back then. It has been today.
Yeah.
And these young people have been frustrated because when they look at that foster mother, you're not my mother. And what can you do to help me? And I just had to think of it in that manner, that all children want their mother.
Yeah.
And want to be with her.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Tara, anything to add or no?
Oh, no, not yet.
Okay, no problem. No problem. So this is the part I know we're going to have things, present day connections. So do you see any present day events reflected in the novel? And how does that make you feel? And then when
I just finished one.
yeah, you did. You did a good job of that. And when
Going
speaking of
before.
Valentine's Farm, Cora explains, even if the adults were free of the shackles that held them fast, bondage had stolen too much time. Only the children could take full advantage of their dreaming if white men let them. What makes this so impactful both in the novel and in today?
I
For
think
me,
we have.
oh, go ahead,
I
Miss
think
Ruth. No, you go ahead.
I think we have to bypass what the white man thinks and think about how we can do it as ourselves.
We can do
We
it
can't
ourselves.
let what he thinks, because most often he has thought wrong.
Yeah, good. Carol and Miss
I think
Donna.
too, when you are tired, you know everything that you've gone through, and you just want your children to be able to succeed with their dreams. But the
Yeah.
beauty of us going through the fight that I know Ruth and I have gone through in our own, because we're a little older than you, is that we know the game that's being played. We can see it coming. Even in the book, you could see some of the Nazism, the fact that how people became paranoid over the shot, whether you got the shot. And I would say, who made you the Nazi police? Reporting people. So things can still get out of hand. And I think it just alerts us to calm down. And that's what we do, calm
Amen.
down and
Amen.
fight the fight, because it doesn't change. It may look different, but it's the
It's the
same fight.
same fight.
But we continue to fight and we never stop. And I think that's one of the amazing things about Black Americans. We will continue to fight.
Well stated. Well stated. I think you both really summarized that the fight continues and that we have to remember that.
I think also we have to give credit to those who are not Black and have been on our sides and
Absolutely.
have always tried to lift us up.
Yes.
For their emotions became a part of our emotion. They took our emotions and they said, let me do something about it. And many of the white people who have helped us have done just that.
Just that. That's true. They have stood, and some of them have.
Beauty of that
shoulder to
too
shoulder.
is when, even especially for white people, to stand up against their own, because they
Oh,
will
that's
be
hard.
villainized as
Oh,
well.
Yeah.
That
that's
it
even
is
worse.
difficult to simply stand up for what is right
But to go against,
and what you are preaching as a Christian or as a person or anything. It's always difficult. And again, one always appreciates those that can have compassion and understand when something is wrong.
yes,
Even when it's a child, when there's an injustice being done to a child in a school, someone has to stand up for them.
absolutely.
Even if the administration is against you, you as a teacher have to stand for that child.
Oh my goodness, yes. My many years in education, I can definitely attest to that. You got to stand up for what's right, despite very, very good.
And often we will say that's not right and don't say anything about it.
Well, silence means acceptance. You have to speak up. As a principal for many years, I told my teachers, if you don't say anything, that means it's okay. Your silence is saying
Exactly.
doesn't matter.
Exactly.
You got to use your mouth, got to speak up. Excellent. Anything else before we close out on this wonderful book? I think it was great. I love Colson Whitehead. We'll have to revisit him some more, but I'm excited about our next book, and we're going to move away from slavery. And we're going to read a play, y'all. We're going to read A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. What am I talking about? Hansberry. That is our next book. I'm so excited about it. I really want to make it interactive and have us even read some of the poetry in the poem. I think plays are poetry. Please get the book. It is amazing. And actually, for all of you guys being on here tonight, I'm going to get the book to you. So get with the, Amanda, you here?
I'm here.
We will get their addresses. If I have Carol's, I have Tara's, I can see Miss Ruth, and I will get a copy of this wonderful play in your hands, so that we can delve into Lorraine Hansberry's wonderful play. I'm super excited about it.
I'm excited about that. That's interesting.
I love reading plays. I can't wait. I've been waiting to bring a play out, so it's time. It is time.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. And I think we can probably stop the recording. So we thank you all for being here for this. And our next one will be March 31st at 6 p.m. pending the museum being okay with that time.